Hello. Hello, can you hear me okay? Oh, wow. Wow, this is an amazing location. For those of you who are down here, there are actually boxes on the side. It's really cool.
We feel like we should be singing opera for you all instead of talking about local journalism.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you all to my esteemed panel. This is my idea, and the good news is you won't be hearing much from me at all, because you've got 4 entrepreneurs, innovators, experts in local news who are going to be sharing what's worked for them, what hasn't, importantly why, to discuss local news. And before I shut up and hand over to my esteemed guests, it came from this irritation I had, which I feel few people shared, definitely in the Brufani bar last year, that when you talk about local news, the narrative that you hear most is that local news is dead, or local news is dying. And it's just not true. It's not true. And these are 4 examples of that. But it is definitely difficult. So without further ado, what we're going to do, because we did do a little bit of organization, each of the panelists is going to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about wins and fails, and then pass along, and then we'll have an open discussion. And then we would like to take questions, so we're going to try and keep time for questions as well. So please think about the questions as you go. There will be time at the end for questions if I can manage to keep us to time. And with that, I'm going to hand over to the wonderful Melissa.
Thank you. I take it we're just going to start with introductions and then talk about wins and fails afterwards. Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Bell. I have to tell you that I feel a little awkward sitting on this panel because I've only really been focusing on local news for the last 6 months. I started my career as a journalist, moved into technology, and then eventually went on to launch Vox, which is part of the Vox Media organization. I started to oversee the editorial groups across Vox Media, including New York Magazine, Eaters, SB Nation, Vox itself. And I had a wonderful decade run at Vox. I was incredibly proud of the work that we did there, but I had a constant fear that I wasn't paying attention to the biggest opportunity and the biggest risk in journalism today, and that's local journalism. So about 6 months ago, I took on the job as the CEO of Chicago Public Media. It's an odd experiment, one that I think is to some a little bit of frightening, but one that to me feels really exciting. WBEZ, the NPR station in Chicago, bought the Chicago Sun-Times, a newspaper that was on the brink of going into bankruptcy. And they raised funding to purchase the paper and hopefully continue the great journalism in Chicago. It is an experiment underway, but I feel very excited and hopeful. Learn a lot from these folks on the stage with me, and I'll tell you more about it as we go. But that's my background.
Okay.
So quick intros. We'll do quick intros around, and then we'll...
So hello, I'm the only non-American, in the panel. No, Canada is in America, I guess, isn't it?
Not yet, anyway.
No, America is not the United States of America. There's more to it than, thank God, actually. Yeah, so... And so I'm very proud to be here. I come from Lisbon, a city in south of Europe, in Portugal, capital of Portugal, where, surprisingly enough, there was no local media that you could call really local media until we started Mensagem de Lisboa, which translates into Message from Lisbon, which is also a book, a very important book from a poet, for those who know, Fernando Pessoa. It's his most important book, and the only one he published while living. And why are we called this? Because we were funded in a cafe in Lisbon called Brasileira do Chiado, and this was the start of a very weird experience that was mainly to work from the cafe, which we couldn't do it all the time, but with this idea of being in a cafe as a mindset. So being one of the people in Lisbon, being a neighbor. And this is when we started Mensagem 4 years ago. We've developed, and we will talk about that later, and now we are 4 years old, we are finally sustainable, and due to the community, basically not as people paying for news, because that's not what people do in Portugal, but the community and the members of the community and the institutions in the community. So I'll tell you about this later.
Oh, no, I got my own. No, I'm good. So I'm Aron Pilhofer. I am Chief Product Officer at the Star Tribune, the Minnesota Star Tribune, based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is basically, I refer to it often as southern Manitoba. It's right on the Canadian border. Yeah, there you go. Is that for Minnesota or is that for Canada?
It's going to be for Canada.
It's going to be for Canada? Okay, fair enough. So I've been in this job for about a year and a half. It is quite challenging, as you can imagine. I run technology product, I run data and analytics, and that's what I'm going to focus on today. Prior to that, I was at Temple University for 6.5 years teaching journalism, and as part of my side hustle, I launched an organization called, or co-founded an organization called the Tiny News Collective, which I can also talk about a bit today if you're at all interested. Tiny News Collective is sort of an unusual organization. It is, it's not really a membership organization. It's we thought of it as more of a shared services organization where we helped really small news organizations get off the ground. And these are like organizations that are founded by like 1 or 2 people. It turns out there's not a lot out in the market to help folks who are operating at that scale. And sort of, if you can kind of think of Tiny News Collective as sort of the opposite side of the coin from like the American Journalism Project, for example, which is very much coming into an organization and like putting a lot of money into a single organization. We are spreading out across many small organizations and hoping to sort of build from the bottom up. So that's me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just to be clear, I am from Canada. We are not yet the 51st U.S. state. No offense, Melissa and Aron. But you're always welcome to come join Canada if you want. Village Media is 11 years old. We were born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada, 11 years ago. We started with 1 local news site in a community of 75,000 people. And today we operate 26 local news sites in the province of Ontario, another 5 publications across Canada, and we license technology that we've built in-house to about another 120 publishers across the country and into the US. We are very much a reach-based business, no subscription whatsoever. So the bulk of our business is driven by advertising, 70% of which is local. We're very deeply rooted and involved in the communities, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And we've been profitable for years and have 0 debt, and we fuel our expansion out of our ongoing operating income. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to, it's not exactly quick fire because, take your time, 3 to 5 minutes talking about your wins and your fails, and why, because I think the why is really important to help understand the different elements, because it's a really diverse set, but I actually, in talking to each of you, I've seen some commonalities and some differences. So Melissa, will you kick us off?
Sure. Actually, I was joking that the team is currently working on this project right now while I get to be in Italy. I gave them the hard work to do while I came here, like any good boss would do. But I asked the team to reorganize the newsrooms. We had 2 newsrooms when I arrived, WBEZ, the radio station, and the Sun-Times, the print paper. And obviously, as many people know, in traditional organizations, when you have a product that you know very well, it is hard to move away from focusing on the product that you know, care about, and love. So we have changed the organization around to be centered around our journalism first and our product second. In doing that, I think that I think that we should celebrate this, even though it was a tough decision. In the process of arriving at a new organization, I had to do a buyout process. And I say that not to celebrate the fact that I had to do this, but I think it's very important for us to recognize how important it is for journalism institutes to be sustainable businesses, and to think really hard about not getting over our skis in any way, and saying that we have to make changes sometimes we have to make changes to our core staff in order to invest in the future needs. I was very lucky to have the partnership of the organization hand in hand with me working on the buyout process. So we were able to actually reduce our overall organization by about $4.2 million in annualized costs because people chose to take this moment to retire, to change their career, to move on. That's a hard decision to go through. It's a hard choice for people to make. But it does allow us that opportunity to set ourselves up for what we need to be investing in the future and not what was required to create a print product or a radio station that we're seeing, we see declines in the listenership and readership year over year. We have to be focusing on our digital product first and foremost. So I think that this reorganization and that process of reaching sustainability in our business is a win, even though it was a hard and tough choice. What makes me excited about this moment is that the tough choices now are sort of behind us. When I get back, we'll be moving back into the office, a new reorged environment, and it will feel like we're ready to start to build the future of Chicago public media. So really proud about that one.
Amazing. Do you want to talk about fails as well?
Oh, sure. There's so many. I think my biggest one, and I feel a little silly, Jeff, because I want you to talk more about this, but I do think that there's a failure in our industry writ large that I think that we need to really focus on, especially at the community level. We have completely just given distribution and conversation over to social media platforms. And that to me feels like the only thing we kept was the journalism, which I know that sounds crazy at a journalism festival for me to say is only one part of the puzzle, but it is. If you look back to community news in 20 years ago, it wasn't just deep investigation watchdog journalism. It was the fact that you could find the connection to the advertising businesses, you could find the connection to the local businesses, you could find the connection to your community members and the letters to the editor. You could have debate and rigor around complex local policy issues in newspaper. And we've basically given that away. We've given it away to Nextdoor, we've given it away to Reddit, we've given it away to Facebook groups. And I think that this is something that I really want us to reassert our ability is to claim the thoughtful, complex conversation that needs to happen at a local level, especially given the fact that so much of our social media platforms are geared towards national noise, yelling, anger. How do we recenter those conversations at the local level in a big way? So that's a broad industry failure.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to Aron because I want to kind of put the two, forgive me for using the term legacy media together, and then the two digital ones. But I know that both of you guys have a lot to say on that. So Aron, over to you.
So the Star Tribune is a 158-year-old newspaper. At least that's how we describe it now. What it is in 5 years, I have no idea. We're going through a very, very rapid transformation led by our publisher, Steve Grove, who is really the reason I'm at the Star Tribune. Steve is not a traditional publisher by any stretch. You know Steve. Richard knows Steve. He was in tech. He was at YouTube and then Google for many years and brings a lot of that mindset to the job. I was shocked when he was hired and when we started talking about his vision for the organization and for product and technology. At a certain point, I'm like, okay, I gotta be part of this. So it's been a whirlwind. We rebranded, relaunched, we replatformed. There's, the website, the app, it's been just an absolute whirlwind, but that's not, I wouldn't point at that and say that's our biggest win. I'm gonna talk about data. Because as an industry, we are shockingly behind when it comes to data and understanding who our customers, yes, I said that word, our customers actually are. These are knowable things. These, in every other industry, these are sort of table stakes kinds of things, but not for some reason in media. So when I got to the Star Tribune, our data team was 2. And they were both very talented, but what they were doing was sort of pulling what they could. They're doing more reporting than analysis. And that's the problem, is we're still trying to measure success based on a business model that is no longer reflective of our current business model. Our business model has shifted in whether you're in subscriptions or whether you're in membership. If you're about reader revenue, your business model is fundamentally about conversion. It's not about scale. It's not about churning as many page views as possible. And yet and still, that is how we are, as an industry, largely measuring success. So we introduced two new North Star metrics. One we're calling Paths, which we stole unabashedly from Newsday, another local publisher out in Long Island, New York. And what Paths does, I won't go into the details of what it is and how it works, but in general what it does is it helps the newsroom in particular, because that was the main audience for it, better understand what people value. And in this case, what do they value enough to actually pay for? And when you start looking at what you do day to day, week to week, month to month, the mix, your editorial strategy, it becomes really abundantly clear that we're doing a lot of stuff that is not valued by our readers. A lot of it is almost reflexive in, like the car crash stories, incremental things at the State House. That's not to say that there aren't smart ways that we could be covering that. In fact, I am a huge +1 to what Melissa said about engaging in conversation. I think that's where the starting point for State House coverage should be, rather than these really boring, jargony, incremental stories that we continue to churn out in the world that basically nobody reads and frankly nobody wants to read. So that to me is the biggest win. And it has, the other day, our editor of News and Politics mentioned offhandedly that based on Paths data, she completely reorganized her desk, and I swear to God, I almost wept. That was
and like, Aron doesn't do emotion.
No, I don't. I'm completely unemotional. But that was like something I didn't expect, and something that I was like, okay, this is real progress.
Sorry, one question. Paths, is that an acronym for something?
Yeah, no, it's not an acronym. It's paths to conversion, basically. So it's
paths, as the English would say. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I didn't mean that as a. Cool. Do you want to talk about fails?
Oh, fails. Well, I think I did. I think it's, as an industry, we really need to stop and take a step back and start aligning around data and data that actually aligns with what we're trying to do rather than data that doesn't.
Great. Catarina?
Yeah, so a lot that has been said is in the DNA of Mensagem since the beginning, because as we started in a cafe and we were very deeply rooted in the community, like this conversation went on from day one. And there were like two things that we had in mind, which was, the first was tone, like to speak to people like and not like journalists. I think this may be a little shocking, but it is like not thinking about matters in the city as a journalist in his crystal palace would do, but like a neighbor. And from the beginning, with all of all the material that we published or the events that we did, and I'm going to speak about that also, were always at this tone of at the same level as people in the streets. And this is not really easy, but it was like when we had the most amazing mission statement that we got was from a reader. She said that we were the eyeglasses that she put on and that she thought she knew Lisbon, but now she knows that she didn't know, and now she knows Lisbon much better because of our work. This is content. But we also did a lot of things, like we never wanted to have a paywall because we very earlier in the stage understood that there were many stories in the city that weren't being told. And these were stories in peripheral neighborhoods, like a guy who planted fruit trees in the backyard of a social project, and he fed some of the families in the place. And this was one of the most read stories in the month that we published. or the story of this French photographer who had come through Lisbon in 1940 and who had photographed the Jewish people who came through Lisbon, which was the only port of going away, of running away from the European war, Second World War. And this was telling the stories of the city, and this was what people were really talking about in the streets. Like last month, we had this very big fight about jacarandas in Lisbon. The mayor wanted to get rid of 25 jacarandas, and we were the first ones to tell the story because we had our ears in the city, and we knew about this. And this was, I think, this is the reason for the content success, failure. It connects to this. When I started Mensagem, I spoke with Madhav on the phone, and he told me, think about business, because the rest you will know how to do it. And we didn't really do it from the beginning. And later on, not that later, that's why we are sustainable this year. We thought, so how are we going to do this? Because we want to keep the content free for these peripheral, non-usually in the news communities to be aware of what's happening. And what we very soon found out was that being neighbors was also our business model. Because we are neighbors, we do things in the city. For example, I was telling you about this photographer who came through Lisbon and took these only photographs, because we also had a dictatorship in that time. In 1940 was Salazar regime, and he didn't want this thing to be known, that we were letting Jewish people passing through Lisbon. And these photographs are the only photographs about the Jewish people in Portugal. And what we did was we got like half of our budget that year was sponsored, because we did a work of art by a very famous artist in Portugal and elsewhere, Vils. I don't know if any of you have, many of you must have his urban murals in your cities. And he offered us the copyrights of that work of art that was based in this story that our reporter discovered. And this photograph that he transformed into a mural is in the exact place where it was taken. And so this was one of the ways that we are sustainable now, is like we work with the people in the city, we work with the institutions, we work with the municipality sometimes, we work with private companies, we work for grants, we do this work with the institutions, the commercial partners in the city. It's almost like we used to do, like advertisement used to be like this. It's not anymore, but we are doing it in a live way. The second thing that we are also doing is also, like, we are there in the city. This is a very nice theater, but not tomorrow, the day after, I'll be in a very nice theater like this in Lisbon, doing our third edition of our monthly live edition, which brings on stage our stories. It's not the journalists as normally is, it is the people who are in the stories who will tell them in the theater. And it's like the tickets go in 5 minutes, because people really want to be engaged in the stories that we tell as neighbors, as Melissa was saying. This is, I think, the success, and it's very interesting that we are turning it into a business model also. It makes me very proud.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I got so many questions for all of you, but we gotta let's go for Jeff.
Thank you. Tons in common as I listen to all of you, and we come from very different places, but we're thinking about a lot of the same things. I think for Village, we had an advantage from the beginning, and that was that we were born digital, and as Catarina's point, also born in a relatively small community. And so we got to see on the ground the impact that not only the journalism had on the community, but the extent of how we would cover the community and provide an extended set of information that we believe it really needs to make the business work. We also were able to sit on the ground with local businesses and realize what, beyond just selling them a standard display ad impression, really drove their business inside the community itself. And so over the years, we've had the fortune of having a number of markets to kind of experiment in and learn. And so we've really created a very data-driven approach and a kind of a systematic approach to how we enter a community. We're very thoughtful about how many people in the newsroom. We're thoughtful about the scope and the cadence of coverage, the extent of community information beyond just original journalism, things like what's the weather today, are the school buses running today, what are the local obituaries, have they become important parts of the model. And then we've also been able to develop a really proprietary and diverse mix of products for local business. So, you know, Melissa, you mentioned, and we talk about this a lot, we talk about the fact that in the old days of a daily newspaper, a large part of the reason people subscribed to the newspaper is because they actually wanted to save money and they wanted to learn about local deals and events and whatnot. And so we've created tools that allow local businesses to participate, but it's not advertising that annoys people, it's intrusive, it's highly informative. And so it actually becomes part of the whole envelope of content within the business itself. I think as we've matured, the last thing that we've learned, which is critical to the business, and actually Village this year now doesn't call ourselves a news organization anymore. We now think of ourselves as a community impact organization. And somewhere along the way, we learned the importance of deep community involvement. So we have a centralized team called our CARES team, and all they do is think about how we get involved in the community, how we strengthen the community. We have programs like Random Acts of Kindness, Community Builders Awards, Community Match Initiatives, where we bring local businesses together with local readers to support people or charities in need. And that's really deepened our influence, our impact on the community, our kind of the perception of us within it. And it's really been a core kind of purpose of Villages. It's really close to our values. So it's really changes the whole dynamic of the news organization.
And
you want to know the fails? Come
on, we have to do the fails.
Of course. I would say there's been 1,000 fails along the way. Like everything I just talked about, we've learned over 11 years. We now have the benefit of time and wisdom, but you know, we've failed in many implementations of tech. We've failed in implementations of product. I think if I think about where we're at today, we've just recently launched a hyper-local social platform we call Spaces. And this is, to your point, Melissa, this is to take on Facebook groups, to take on Reddit, to take on Nextdoor at community level. And I think, I say right now, we fail daily and we improve weekly. So we are testing this in 10 communities, and it's not a rocket ship. We haven't taken over Facebook groups in 5 months by any means, but every day we learn a little bit more. We look at what the users are doing, we talk to them, we have focus groups, but there's a lot of fails within that. And I think the failure that we have right now is that if you look at our 26 communities, the best ones are ones where we have a person, and it tends to be a sales manager, or in some cases a former publisher role, who is deeply locally connected to the community. Because now we're the big bad scaled network, right? We're the 26 site corporation, but we still try to be incredibly meaningful in that local market. And many of them have that, but not all of them. So we haven't actually followed our own model in every one of our markets. And so I think that's an area that we need to improve on.
Thank you. I'm going to encourage everybody in the audience to think about questions and get ready to put your hands up. These are all, oh, we already have a question. Forget it. Let's just go straight to questions. Excellent. I don't know if we have a mic. If not, I'm going to just pass you mine.
They're bringing one out.
No, they have. You got one? One is coming to you. Thank you very much. I get to, these are all friends of mine, and I get to talk to them via email and on VC, so you should be asking the questions. In the third row there. Thank you. And if you could just say who you are and where you're from.
My name is Ulrike.
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Ulrike Langer. I'm a German-American media innovation journalist, and I know many of you. So it seems to me that you might have made a pact with each other before this session not to mention the big bad word AI, because you haven't. But since this session is labeled cutting edge of local news, I would really like to know from everyone if and how you are using AI to be cutting edge. And if not, why not?
Who wants to go?
Sure. It's a great question, and I think that this is something that we have to recognize how revolutionary the shift to AI, and especially the shift to AI agents across the web will be for us. What we've started to do is think about AI internally in 3 different ways. One is to help with our journalists. One is to help with our user experience, obviously like personalization and things like that of our site. And then the third, I think, is actually the most interesting area for me, and it goes to kind of these community components, which is how do we harness the value of AI agents for city information that wouldn't normally be available to other people. I always sort of joke about this. I'm a bike rider, so I ride my bike to work every day. And there's one part, because it's Chicago, that always freezes up. It's just this worst curve on the bike path. And you can find out if they're going to salt the ice path on this outdated 1982 Parks and Rec website in Chicago. Somebody's updating the information. Somebody's putting that information out there. But it is so hard to get to. And so I'd like us to start working with, in the same way that you talked about this, working with community organizations, with city organizations, to actually surface that information to our audience and make it useful for folks. So those are sort of the 3 pillars. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. I think the third option with the journalist is probably the hardest and the one that we're going into the most carefully. Journalists are naturally scared of transition and transformation. So we're being very targeted where we have one AI engineer working with one-on-one with people saying, what is the work that you do that is the lowest value to you? And can we build something that will help you do that task? And so, for instance, our arts and culture editor has to compile events listings. And it's thankless, it's boring, it doesn't feel like journalism. It is very easy to do, to build something that can pull and curate comedian acts around Chicago, and then make sure that it's fact-checked and correct. But it cuts down her work from a couple hours every day to 20 minutes. Another one is we translate our articles into Spanish. So if they get the first translation, and then our Spanish-speaking editors can go through it and make sure that it's accurate, that's a great task. But we're doing it in very small experiments in that way, so as not to overwhelm the staff and make them feel anxious about it. So.
Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I can. I don't think AI is big or bad, actually. I mean, it might be big, but it certainly isn't bad. And I say that because I think the least interesting use of AI is the one that we all see written about constantly, and that's content generation. And the number of fails that keep adding up, it just every day, it's a new stupid thing that somebody has done. So last year we launched at the Star Tribune something we call the AI Lab. It's 3 engineers, 2 of which come from a news background, 2 of whom come from a news background. This is funded in part with grants. So OpenAI through the Lenfest Institute and Google have funded us. And part of our mission is to actually bring AI-driven tools to local publishers. So that's our main focus right now. That's the big thing that we're working on. One use case that we're for AI internally, it's similar to what Melissa's talking about, but I was at the New York Times when, at the very earliest stages of what became the cooking app, and I was part of not that team, but a team that was working in parallel on a different product. And I can tell you, having been through that, knowing what they did to get 22,000 or whatever it was, recipes from unstructured text into an actual database, it cost like 7 figures. It took years to do. It was a monumental effort to do. As it turns out, LLMs are really good at those kinds of tasks. And so the platform that we're building internally, we were able to go through, I think it was like 6,000 recipes from the Star Tribune. We were able to do that in a weekend. And the key is we're able to validate it and flag recipes where there might be a problem. But that platform has so many use cases for local news, local newsletters, aggregation, other kinds of things. And so that is what we will be turning into a platform, working with the Minnesota Newspaper Association and local publishers. So that we're going to be launching that later this year. That hasn't been announced yet. So. But I feel like nobody's going to really care.
Jeff, I'm curious. I actually don't know the answer because you've got your own tech stack. So what are you doing in the AI space?
So probably similar. We're not using it to write stories from scratch. We're letting everyone else make those mistakes and getting humiliated for it. Right now, we've just launched some tools that really help the journalists be more efficient. So things like summarizing content, things like optimizing headlines or optimizing text for social, things like scanning an article and finding related entities like people or places or businesses across our historical archives. Some of my favorite tools are how we can have the journalist use these to engage the users more. So we have inside of our platform a polling platform as well as our own commenting engine. And so these tools are really good at reading an article and recommending a community poll that would be related to that article. And it helps the journalists because they don't have to get into that mindset. They have to validate it. They have to, as a human, go and check these things off. But it's really prompting them to use this in-article polling feature a lot more. Same with comments. So the platform will kind of scan the article and it will recommend a comment. There's a very specific prompting that we've tested to do this, but it will recommend a comment that is designed to, in an unbiased way, engage the community in a constructive dialogue about that particular article. And again, the reporters typically weren't of that mindset, and so they needed some help. They still have to validate it, but those are the things we're using it for, and I think they're really helpful tools. Melissa, we should chat because we're working with an AI innovation lab that I haven't looked at it yet, they've just finished it, but for purposes of monitoring, and there's so much time savings there, taking a fire hose of information across a community that's coming from school boards and police and cities and health units and hospitals and you name it, and being able to evaluate that for local relevance as well as newsworthiness based on historical archives and surface that to our journalists, our editors, so that they can action that and put a human on it in a much more efficient way. And this is where I love AI, but it's not writing our articles, not for a long time.
And if there's anybody in here who is of the mindset that AI is just hype and there's nothing useful there, I would just encourage you, if you haven't done it, go use Notebook LM, play around with Notebook LM, and then come talk to me and tell me about how much hype there is around AI.
More questions? Keep thinking about them. Because I have a, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to add one thing, though, that I think is actually really unique about the question of being concerned about AI. I see as an opportunity for community news organizations because it is, it relies on the fact that there's individuals that they trust and know. People want people. And so I feel like it gives us a unique opportunity, as well as using the tools to assert our humanity, the fact that we're the neighbors. So I actually think that it plays a lot of benefits, not just in the tool space, but also in like showing the value of people.
But before we go to Kevin, just a quick follow-up. Do any of you worry about bad actors using AI to create content and try and displace you?
They already are. They're already out there. There's newsletters that are just total, just garbage. One person, a developer, throwing AI at it. It's already happening.
Yeah, and I think I didn't answer the question because we are very small and we just use it in back office. But you know, we have this problem. It doesn't work that well in Portuguese. For example, title recommendation and everything is not as in English. It's not at all. Not at all. So it works, but it doesn't work that well. When we work with Newspack, and so we sometimes use the AI tools to produce better social media titles, and they are very bad. So ours are better.
This isn't going to make you feel better, but in my partial day job, I work with AI developers, and when we ask them about languages. When I ask them about Portuguese, they say they are interested, but they want Brazilian Portuguese rather than Portuguese.
Yeah, and it's very different, so yeah.
Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Anderson, former local news editor, but now I work at PugPig. We build apps, including Aron's. So my question is about revenue. And so this morning, the question about product, what's a news product? It's something that provides value to an audience and captures value. Now, Jeff, I'm really curious about how you've made local advertising work. So I'd love that. But the rest of you, how are you rebuilding local revenue so that it sustains a newsroom that really serves the communities?
Jeff?
I'll take a first shot at that. Thanks for the question. So let me start by saying I have this strong belief that the business in digital publishing, at least at local level, of just selling display ads beside original journalism does not work. So let me start there. That's why we look at a really diversified mix of content beyond original journalism, news, et cetera, the whole community information component. But from a product standpoint, it has to be way beyond display. So if you look at Village's product mix, yes, we sell display advertising, but we sell newsletter advertising, we sell video, we sell proprietary market research, we sell sponsored content, we have a sponsored journalism initiative called our Community Leaders Program. And then we have this huge thing we call our Community Hub, which is now turned into a Village Gold subscription product for local business, which is literally bringing back business directories, business profiles, classified advertising, but very specific. So we have a product now called Goldmine, where local businesses through a self-serve dashboard can post things for sale, events, jobs, and look at their reporting right inside that dashboard. It is the mix of those things that make our business work. We would never survive off any one of them, but it is a complex mix. And of course, they're weaved into commercial programs, like annual programs, et cetera. But that is how we do it. And I honestly feel that in this world where social's getting really fragmented and people are losing that continuity of one place to go to get information about their community, that those products will just keep evolving and will continue to get more and more valuable for local businesses because we'll be that spot.
And two observations, if I may, about Village, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to advertising, almost all of your advertising is direct sold. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you look at the mix of the business in the ad market world of our business, 70% is direct sold local. And it might be more depending on seasonality. So programmatic kind of national or open inventory sold on auction is 20% or so. And then the 10% is a little bit of reader revenue through voluntary contribution, things like that.
It seems to me that the commonality, I really like what you said, Catarina, about your business model is being a good neighbor. It seems like your business model is being a good neighbor too, to all the businesses to help them grow in your communities.
Yeah, we feel they're part of our whole model. It's not just someone we sell. It's like, this is community information. And they're helping us. Honestly, they're paying us to produce content that our readers want to look at. It's a win-win.
I think I saw a hand. Maybe I was wrong. Yes.
Hi, my name is Eva Liuko and I'm editor-in-chief of a local independent platform for the city of Rotterdam. So thank you. It's interesting to hear all your stories. Something we are now very involved with is the question of how the fact that we are still very independent of social media in order to reach our readers and to get our stories to readers. And now we left X and we see we have a very, very critical audience and they are also leaving meta platforms. Everything is very fragmented. But then we are local. So I always feel like we should profit from the fact that we are local and have a local solution for this problem of the moment. And I don't know are you also involved with this question at your platforms, and how do you have any solutions for this, or
are you there with them? Are you located in the city?
Yes, we are. We have an office in the city. Yeah.
So open your doors, like be there with them, do events, be with the people, go to a cafe, do sessions with the people. It's like it's it's not massive, but it's, as you said, like 15 people truly engaged are better than 100 people that just go by your title or your, on Facebook. But there is also one thing: why leave the platforms? Why? Because you have to be where people are, and real people don't have these thoughts about, if it's it's okay if you have, like, if you had a problem or something like that. If not, just be there. Be there, be where they are. You are them. You are them. That's one of the things that I think we have to bear in mind. We are people. We are not just journalists. We are people. And if people are, we do these events. These events are 150, 200 people going there. Those are the really engaged people. So you get them there. But we also reach, I don't know, 200,000 people through Instagram or through Facebook. So why not? Be there.
Jeff, can I put you on the spot for a second?
Of course.
Based on our lunchtime conversation, do you want to talk a little bit about Spaces and your theory about the on-ramp? I thought that was very interesting about social.
Yeah, and maybe I'll first say sometimes you don't leave the platform, sometimes they leave you. So I'm from Canada, where Meta has abandoned news completely. So we're gone, whether we like it or not. And so part of the reason we built Spaces is to take that position where you can connect a community to topics not necessarily directly related to news. So people who love gardening, people who love cycling, et cetera, can engage together inside of that community element. We are finding that social's getting kind of more and more toxic, especially in the absence of news being part of it, but it's getting more and more fragmented as well. So part of our answer is that, but what Catarina said is exactly right too, and this is our CARES program, and this is, like, we still take out billboards. We're digital only, we have office space. We paid we paid a group of people to walk around as human billboards in Toronto when we launched in Toronto. We participate in events, we host free coffee for people, we get actively involved with nonprofits and charities, and sometimes that's just in-kind contributions. But I think becoming part of the community is the best way that you can really solidify your position long-term with those readers. It takes time. None of this happens overnight, but that's a great thing to do.
And if I may paraphrase you from lunch, when Jeff and I were talking over lunch, and he was saying that, a lot of the focus, and again, correct me if I misinterpreted any of this, but a lot of the focus is to make sure that you get the direct connection to the people in your community, whether that's through the newsletter or coming to the website. And what social was providing was this kind of passive on-ramp. That was the phrase that...
Oh, yeah, sorry. I mean, I think I missed that little part of it. But yeah, and that's the sad thing. I think that in particular, Facebook, at least in Canada, used to be really an important early stage audience driver. And now I think it's a problem for society that we've lost that, because not everyone, as we probably all know in this room, not everyone is an avid news consumer these days. It's hard to get them to commit to a newsletter. It's hard to get them to bookmark and come back every day. And so Facebook provided a nice place for a casual relationship first. They could, our readers could date us before they got married to us through Facebook, get peripherally exposed to content, and then eventually become more and more interested. And that's gone. That's why we're trying to rebuild it.
And my observation is that the smartest, not just local news publishers, but the publishers that I've had the pleasure of dealing with, looked at social as part of the marketing funnel and not as the be-all and end-all. It was like they went and they were there because they were trying to achieve something as the top of the funnel, the passive on-ramp. I like the passive on-ramp phrase. And it was the ones who said we should be there for the sake of being there that was much more fragile.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say also that it's not always toxic. It is sometimes like we publish a lot of inspiring stories, and a lot of the reactions, 99% of the reactions are good. They are not always toxic. They are sometimes, it sometimes has to do with the way and the tone, again, that you publish things.
I might take a slightly different approach to this. I think that you're correct. I think that there is like a passive on-ramp that did work with social media, but I do find our the fact that we spend time on platforms that are actively actually trying to hurt us is problematic. We still currently publish on X and Facebook, and I don't want us to continue. My staff knows this. We've talked about this, but I think it's a little, Elon Musk is trying to end public funding to media companies in the US, and yet we're making money for him on his platform. Like, that just seems like a very counterintuitive relationship. I want to work with platforms that want to help my business, not actively hurt my business. So I do think that we, whether the audience is there or not, I do think that it's important for us to make some choices about how we spend our time and our resources. One of the funniest places that I feel like has actually become a really interesting social media network is LinkedIn. And I think it's because it's a platform that I think actually does put you in a place, and it centers you geographically. And so I think for us in local media, that has been a successful place. I'd rather have my team promote more of our work on LinkedIn than on a place like X. So that's the only note that I'll say.
Right, we're almost out of time. If there is any last question, if there isn't, because I can't see a sign, can you put up the slide? Yeah. So before we thank all the panelists, I just wanted to end on a slightly positive note to tell you about, I was asked to tell you about the Global Youth and News Media Prize that will give an award for excellence in local news and youth collaborations. Everyone talks about the young, and if you are doing things with those young people, as we all old people call them, this is a prize for you. There's a lot of initiatives out there. It launches on the 16th of April. It's looking for partners in this. Please take a look at the QR code and get involved with it, because it's a pretty cool initiative, and I think that's important. And I think with that, I will ask you to please thank the panelists. Thank you very much.